Let's begin with our motivation. So all around we're surrounded by sentient beings. Everybody means well according to their own perspective, their own criteria. But if you are able to stand back and look, our minds are completely clouded by ignorance, meshed in attachment, rattled around by anger. And so, although we appear normal, we appear like everything's going fairly okay in our lives, actually we're in quite a dire situation. And the depth of our ignorance is so great that we don't even see that. So somehow, having encountered the Dharma and letting the Dharma shine some light in our mind, so at least we can see a little bit how out of touch with reality our mind is. And at least to know that we need to do some work to eliminate the detrimental attitudes and emotions and cultivate the good ones. And that we've met a tried and true path to do that. And yet, even in our fortunate condition, it's so difficult to take care of the mind and manage the mind. And our introspective awareness goes bye-bye. And sometimes even our mind's overwhelmed by afflictions. We don't have any wish to stop them, or we suddenly forget all the antidotes to use or whatever. So when we really look at our own situation and the situation of all sentient beings, we really get a sense of how completely miserable cyclic existence is, and how blind we are to that fact. So just even having a sense of that is enough to turn our mind towards taking refuge, because we know we need help. We know we need to learn a method. We know we need to practice. And we know that we can't do it by ourselves. So even though the path entails our taking responsibility and transforming our own mind, we need the aid of the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We need the aid of teachers and good Dharma friends. So we turn for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, with our motivation being to be able to transform our own minds so that we can really make a good contribution to others' welfare, so that we can spread bodhicitta, spread wisdom, help people learn how to find that peaceful place inside themselves. And so with that kind of motivation, let's aim for full enlightenment. and see listening to teachings as one drop, but a very important drop, just even one teaching, one very important drop in filling that bucket of merit and wisdom. So to share the news with you, so Venerable Chudni and I today spent 6 hours going into Spokane well, what happened is yesterday we got a phone call from our friend Skylar, who works at the Interfaith Council at City Hall. And we knew him from when he was at Eastern, and he's come up here many times. And he said there was going to be a Bernie Sanders rally today, and Bernie wanted to meet with the Interfaith Council. And so would we come? So we said yes, and that's where we spent our 6 hours, except I would say only 10 minutes of it, was with Bernie of the 6 hours. So we got there, and there was this, we had to go into a special entrance, and then we were talking with all the other people from the interfaith, and there was one of the state senators and different people, from different religious groups and so on. There were how many people? Maybe 20? Yeah, I think maybe 20 people. And so they had us sit in a room backstage, and Bernie was running late. So we all talked to each other for quite a long time. And it was very interesting. She and I were at different tables. So my table, the people were like so excited. They were vibrating with excitement, And I was sitting there thinking that, because I spent hours, sometimes when I go to see His Holiness, you have to wait. But so I'm used to waiting for important people. But the feeling in His Holiness's office is completely different. I mean, usually people speak in lower voices, or they sit quietly or whatever. But here, they were just vibrating. And there were a lot of young people there. You really see what the press what they say about, Bernie Sanders' main base is young people. And it was lovely, really, to see so many young people interested in what's happening in the world, because so often, our experience is that they're like this. But they still were like this. I was the only person there without a phone, and everybody else had their phones out. So they were, I was sitting at a younger table, so they were talking and texting at the same time. She was at a table with a few older people, which alternated talking and texting. Yeah. So, everybody immersed in their phones. But it was really kind of sweet, to feel this energy that people are, there's something that they have something to believe in. They want to work towards something, and the fact that Bernie had asked, I guess, yeah, when he heard there was an interfaith council in Spokane, he said he wanted to meet with us. Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. So then when it looked like he was about to come, then we all lined up, for the picture. and he came in and gave a short talk while we're all lined up for the picture. The picture was the big thing. Everybody had their phone, and they were ready when we were sitting at our tables. They were ready to jump up and snap the picture as soon as he came in. But we weren't sitting at the tables when he came in. We were all lined up in our positions for the photo. And yeah, so he came in. He talked for a few minutes. What did he talk about? One thing that I caught is he was saying that it's a moral issue, kind of what's happening in this country, that people don't have health care, they don't have good education, that people, the amount of poverty in this country. And so he was talking about it as an ethical issue. So later, when we had 3 questions, so I asked a question and asked him to speak a little bit more about that, follow up on that. So I was actually quite, and it was interesting because he was saying, usually when you talk about those same items, they're spoken about in terms of politics and, who's for what and how much this is going to cost and how much that's going to cost. And he's trying to change the nature of the conversation to one of this is a moral issue, not a political issue. When people don't have health care, when they don't have education, when they don't have, things like that. Another person asked about, our interfaith group and how he saw, his campaign relating to the interfaith groups and so on. And so he was saying, he's met with an environmental group and several different groups while he's been here in Spokane. And it's the whole think globally, act locally. And so really kind of wanting to empower local organizations to do whatever they can. And really, feeling like we need all of society on board, that it's not just a question of a few people running things, but it's really about getting everybody on board to make a significant change. And then there was one Muslim woman there who said that, she's been the target of some taunts and something, and so he immediately kind of, told that, he's very much against that kind of thing and doesn't like at all about how it's being used in the election, Do you remember what else he spoke about?
No,
what did I miss?
I remember about what you pointed out about the local action was he cited a couple of interesting examples, like Seattle raising the minimum wage as a city to $15 an hour.
Right.
How that what local action has an impact nationally.
Yeah. So Seattle raising their minimum wage, how that affects, the whole country. Yeah. So it was quite interesting. We didn't stay for the rally. Yeah, the only big group things I ever go to are with His Holiness. That's it. Yeah. So, is there more you want to say about the people you talked to or anything?
No, I think the thing that I was most moved by and was very moved by.
Here, you want to put this on so it goes in the machine?
Yeah.
She doesn't need that one.
Oh, she doesn't need
That's
this.
just that.
Oh, she needs this one?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you get this. Whoop. This one, then it goes right up.
The thing I was most moved by really was the excitement of the young people, and many of the people, older people in the room too, are really excited by him. But that energy of thinking like here is not just a possibility of making change, But one of the things that, one of the people that I was at a table with was talking about how it's like they felt heard. The problems of the family, the problems of the people not having health care, or like one of the women I talked to, I said, how did you get involved? She was part of his campaign. She said, my mom, who's been a nurse for 32 years, has health coverage, but just had 2 heart attacks and is now $300,000 in debt. And she said she'll never get out of it. And nobody talks about that. But now we are talking about that. And so it's like somehow the excitement of people feeling heard and feeling like, okay, if I'm heard, I can be a part of the conversation. So whatever the outcome, and this is not an endorsement, I put the photo up. This is not an endorsement of anybody, I want to be clear. But that the excitement around maybe we can make a difference was, I found very moving.
Yeah, I mean, really to see people caring about something bigger than themselves. Yeah, I think that's the thing that's important. Yeah, and the table where I was sitting, 2 of the people were going to speak before Bernie spoke, and they were both nervous, and one of them said to me, like, I want to feed off your energy. You're so calm. Yeah.
Also, for the community, I sat with a woman who sang the
Star Spangled Banner.
Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
She sang the national anthem, and so I really pitched her on our version, and we'll send her the text and the music so that maybe she'll have a chance to sing that.
Yeah, we were thinking that it would actually be a good venue for it. You know, his kind of rallies would probably be receptive to it. Okay, so we were on what, 224? Okay, so in we've been talking about, you know, not getting discouraged in our practice of the 2 collections, even though we haven't started them officially yet, but in our similitudes of the 2 collections. Okay, and then how, you know, because one of the things that people get afraid of when they hear about practicing the Bodhisattva's deeds is that it's going to, well, first of all, everything's immeasurable, so it's going to take a long time. So Nagarjuna assuaged our fears there, talking about how valuable bodhicitta was, how much merit you could create very quickly with the bodhicitta motivation. And then a second fear people have is that it's going to be difficult and maybe even painful, and they may have to suffer doing the bodhisattva path. And so, you know, it's interesting. It's like, yes, I want to lead all sentient beings to awakening, but I don't want to suffer, not even a little bit. Yeah? So, you know, we have a little problem with our self-centeredness. But then Nagarjuna is going into this section about how the Arya Bodhisattvas don't experience physical or mental pain. They don't experience physical pain because of their great accumulation of merit. They don't experience mental suffering because of their collection of wisdom. Okay? And so in 223, you know, Nagarjuna is saying from confusion comes the mental suffering of attachment, anger, fear, lust, and such. But the bodhisattvas are able to quickly eliminate that by realizing that all phenomena are foundationless. And that, in other words, they don't have an inherently existent basis, or they aren't founded in inherent existence. Okay, so that means that we can do away with all of these afflictions. Then 224, 225 if bodhisattvas are not greatly harmed by mental and physical pain, then even though in an endless universe they lead the world, why would they be discouraged? Even brief suffering is difficult to bear. What need, then, to mention suffering for a long time? But even if limitless in duration, what could harm one who has no suffering and is happy? Okay, so there's no reason to be discouraged, again, about accumulating the two collections, because once we become an Arya Bodhisattva, we're not greatly harmed by the physical and mental pain. So even if it takes a long time to fulfill a path, we don't have any, it's not like we're spending all that time in the hell realm suffering, nothing like that. And I think even, before you become an Arya Bodhisattva, it seems to me just by the force of your Dharma practice that your pain is going to decrease. I mean, first of all, because you're creating less negative karma, you're doing more purification. But also mentally, the mental pain that we so often experience, the more we practice, then we learn to work with our own afflictions and apply the antidotes. And when we do that, the mental pain from those afflictions, subsides, at least temporarily. So I think, when you practice for a while, you can see that your mind isn't, it's still crazy, but it's not as crazy as it was before. And you might still have some unhappiness, but it's not the level of unhappiness and confusion and anger and so on that you used to have, let's say 5 years ago or 10 years ago, something like that. Yeah, have you experienced that? Yeah? So we can see just from our practice that the Dharma works, and that, as you practice more, it, your suffering decreases, and so that gives you more energy to practice and more willingness to practice. Okay, so, when we practice, then, and I think especially when you have like spontaneous bodhicitta, I mean, even your, path of accumulation, already by having the spontaneous bodhicitta, when you get to the next, you're still at the second level of the path accumulation, the middle part of it. When your bodhicitta is more stable, you're not going to lose it. Then you have so much joy and so much enthusiasm for practice. So even you haven't necessarily realized emptiness yet, yeah. But just the fact of having that wide open heart for sentient beings, even when you see them suffering and you find their suffering unbearable, you don't get discouraged because you know that their suffering comes about due to causes and conditions, and that causes and conditions, being impermanent, produce phenomena, can be changed, and by knowing especially that the causes of the afflictions which cause the polluted karma, that all of that is based on misconception, on wrong grasping. So it all can be eliminated. So that must give you like a lot of optimism and a lot of joy, because even though you see suffering, you know that suffering isn't a given. It doesn't have to be like that. Okay. So then when you get to be an Arya, then you can manifest in many different kind of bodies, and, people call you names, people insult you, people kill you. It doesn't matter to you, because those are all manifestations, that you're able to create due to your wisdom and compassion. Okay. Then 226, bodhisattvas have no physical suffering. How could they have mental suffering? But through compassion, they feel pain for the world. For that reason, they remain for a long time. Okay? So from their side, Arya Bodhisattvas don't experience physical or mental suffering. Okay? So, but they say they voluntarily take rebirth in cyclic existence. Now, I was wondering when I was editing this, just even saying that Arya Bodhisattvas take rebirth in cyclic existence, because in actual fact, you know, they're not taking, the Arya Bodhisattvas are not taking rebirth under the influence of the 12 links. So they're not technically in samsara, and it's not technically a samsaric rebirth. But the idea is that within this broader landscape where there's so many of us beings who are in samsara, then they create manifestations here in order to help us and to guide us. So those manifestations look like they're taking rebirth, you know, because when bodhisattvas make manifestations, it's not that they appear in the middle of the room, kind of like, you know, which were Star Trek, yeah, where they just kind of materialize in the middle of the room and there they are, or, you know, they don't come in the windows like Peter Pan with you know, all the little stardust first and things like that. But, you know, it looks like they're born with a mom and a dad, and, you know, they grow up and they have to go to school and you know, all these kinds of things. And the idea behind that is that by appearing like us, then we can feel close to those bodhisattvas, and they can teach us because they look like us and do things like us. Whereas if, you know, they showed their real bodhisattva form with a body made of radiant light and so on, we would be so dazzled that, you know, forget Bernie Sanders, you know, we would be like, you know, and we wouldn't actually practice because we would be just so dazzled, yeah. So, you know, when somebody appears like us, then it's much more skillful for leading us. So that's how they appear. But they have very, very strong compassion, and their compassion and bodhicitta prevents them from, you know, realizing emptiness, eliminating the afflictive obscurations, and then staying in their own state of personal peace, their own nirvana, okay? So because of compassion, they can't do that. They would find that reprehensible, you know? They couldn't live with themselves if they did it, you know, because it would be so blatantly self-centered and uncaring, uncompassionate for others. Okay, so they continually manifest in different forms for our benefit. So they take many lives like that. Yeah, when bodhisattvas look at our suffering, yeah, they have compassion that finds our suffering unbearable. So in one way, you know, they say that bodhisattvas find sentient beings' suffering unbearable. But the way they find it unbearable is different than the way we find other people's suffering unbearable when we watch it. Yeah, because sometimes when we see people with very gross suffering, we can't bear it. Yeah, and it feels like compassion, but I think very often it's fear that this could happen to me. Yeah, somebody else is bleeding like this, somebody else is on their deathbed. It's so awful to watch because we know that we're susceptible to that, okay? And so sometimes that, you know, that personal distress, it actually immobilizes us from acting out of compassion because we're stuck in our own distress. So, but bodhisattva's compassion is very different than that, you know. I mean, they experience pain watching our pain, and they see our pain as intolerable, but they don't have that sense of personal distress or dismay or despair. again, because they know that there's remedies, they know that there's antidotes, they know the situation can be changed. Okay? So bodhisattvas always have an optimistic attitude. And I think this is something very important, you know, in our Dharma practice, that we have an optimistic attitude, you know, that can view incredible suffering and misery, but does not feel despair or discouraged because of it, yeah, but has that optimistic attitude. And you can see that very much in His Holiness, you know, when you look at what he's gone through in his life. And yet, you know, a very cheerful, buoyant kind of personality. And at the same time, you know, working very hard for sentient beings. Okay. So even like in the perfection vehicle, you have to spend 3 countless great eons. That's from the time you generate spontaneous bodhicitta. So we're not even at the beginning of the 3 countless great eons. But yeah. But you know, still, I mean, they have this very positive, eager mental state. Yeah, that doesn't give up and doesn't get discouraged or depressed or, you know. And I think we really need to develop that. Yeah, and that's why when I look, you know, developing fortitude is so important, you know. And it's so much more than just learning to bear insult or, you know, things like that, which are daily life occurrences, which even we can't stand. You know, but to really see what you have to go through if you're going to be a bodhisattva and work for the benefit of sentient beings. You know, that on one hand you look at sentient beings as totally lovable, you know, in that heartwarming love that we talked about in the BBCs. So you see them very much in a positive light as lovable. And you also see that their minds are completely overwhelmed by afflictions, and that you really can't count on them for anything, you know? So on the one hand, yeah, they're incredibly kind and they keep you alive. On the other hand, you know, they're totally unpredictable because beings whose minds are, you know, operating based on wisdom and polluted karma, you know, their minds are fickle and karma ripens and all sorts of stuff happens, yeah? So as a bodhisattva, you're not looking to other sentient beings for security, yeah? The other sentient beings aren't the people who are going to prop you up and make you feel that your life is meaningful and you're doing something good, you know? They're the people that you're going to teach and you're going to help and you're going to do back-breaking things to help them. And then they're going to turn around and say, leave me alone, you know, get out of here, stop meddling in my life. Yeah, and that sometimes happens. I mean, some sentient beings are very grateful. Yeah, but I think we've all experienced, I know I have, you know, situations where you try and help somebody, people totally ungrateful. Yeah, completely ungrateful. I won't tell you stories. Well, there's one story tempting to tell.
Okay, we're ready.
Yeah, I don't think the person will wind up hearing about this. But I'm hoping not, otherwise. No, but there was one person, this happened many years ago, in the 90s, and a young man who had a brain tumor. And it was quite serious, and he was going to have brain surgery. He was like, I don't know, 25 or something like that. He was really scared because he was seeing double and, you know, with a brain tumor and surgery and all. So we spent a long time and, you know, helping him, talking through things. I did a lot of prayers. I called Rinpoche and asked for advice and, you know, really kind of did whatever I could to help him. And the surgery worked out very well, thank goodness. And then it was quite interesting. I don't understand. But after the surgery, then somehow he didn't want to talk to me anymore, and he was very curt and rude and a bit angry. Yeah? And I couldn't figure out why. Somebody said sometimes, I don't know, you're,
Could
yeah.
have been where the tumor was on the brain, that it affected his emotional center some. And
Yeah.
he, you know, you can get personality change very easily with
After,
surgery.
yeah, yeah. So maybe it could have been some result of the tumor or whatever. But it was actually quite a good practice for me, because I just had to say, yeah, I mean, my joy was in helping him. And if he doesn't want to talk to me anymore, that's okay, you know. And then seeing, you know, okay, this is my practice, what I have to practice with. And then looking also at the situation my teachers go through, how many times they reach out and try and help people and do things for people, and then the way their students act towards them. You know, sometimes really quite shocking. And so realizing that, you know, when these things happen to me, they're actually quite minor compared to what other people are having to go through, and what my teachers have to go through, what bodhisattvas have to go through. But, you know, you work at it, that becomes your practice at transforming your mind, developing some inner strength so that all these things don't blow you away. Yeah? Because if every time somebody doesn't appreciate you, you know, and at least say thank you, you know, didn't their mother teach them to say thank you? You know, and just to not expect anything. Yeah? Because it's so easy with us, you know, we help, and then, you know, you know, somebody at least should say thank you. Yeah? Shouldn't they?
It's just 2 words.
Yeah, it's 2 words. It's common courtesy. It's manners. You know, they should at least say thank you, instead of get off my back and leave me alone and stop meddling and, you know, whatever it is. Okay? So, you know, to really train, have that why we cultivate fortitude, so that these things don't derail us. Because if ever, you know, if we're trying to be a bodhisattva and we get knocked off every time somebody isn't nice to us, you know, we're not going to be able to do anything. Yeah? We're going to lie in bed with our thumb in our mouth, you know, and just feel sorry for ourselves the whole time. So, yeah, I think that thing of fortitude is quite important, yeah? Okay, then 227 is, thus do not be discouraged by thinking that Buddhahood is so distant. 3 countless great eons is nothing. Well, they tell you in Tantra, you know, because Tantra has special methods, you can accumulate the merit very, very quickly. You don't have to spend 3 countless great eons. And Tantra also has very important special methods for developing a special insight and serenity, and then the unity of serenity and insight. And so, you know, you can shorten the path if you practice Tantra. But of course, you really have to be quite an exceptional practitioner to be able to benefit from doing that. Okay, so 227 is, you know, don't be discouraged by thinking Buddhahood's so distant. Always be assiduous in this practice to eliminate faults and obtain good qualities. Okay, so practice with joy, with enthusiasm, with confidence that you can amass a huge amount of merit through doing, you know, actions, even small actions with the bodhicitta motivation. You know, and anyway, when you think about it, what else are you going to do? It's like, you know, we've been born as everything in samsara, done everything in samsara. So you want to do it again? Yeah? You want to climb Mount Everest again? Yeah, you want to be Lady Gaga or Rambo again? Yeah, or you want to be maybe Michael Jackson or you know, I don't know, some big sports star. And you want to do it again? So, you know, when you look at samsara that way, then the only thing we haven't done is practice the Dharma and, you know, grown the two collections. So let's try that if we want to do something new in samsara. New and exciting, never experienced before. Okay. And so then Khenzo Rinpoche is giving some suggestions here about, you know, if you want to accumulate great merit when you're doing a Tara Puja, then, you know, all your offerings that you put on, then do those in conjunction with the 4 immeasurable factors. Do you remember what they were from last time? Immeasurable time. Immeasurable sentient beings. Immeasurable awakening and the qualities of awakening and virtue. Okay? So to put those 4 factors in there. So, you know, imagining that your offerings expand and fill the whole universe, and you're making them throughout all time, and with the motivation of bodhicitta, in order to attain all the wonderful qualities of awakening, you're offering these on behalf of the limitless sentient beings and to limitless assemblies of Tara and her entourage. Yeah. And so if you know, when you just make a simple offering, but with that kind of mind, your mind is really quite big, you know. And the same when we do the chanting, you know, when we're doing Namo Benze Se Chamuni Fo, to imagine, you know, that there's a huge assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in front of us. We're surrounded by all the sentient beings. On every atom of our body, there's the same thing going on. We're in a pure land with bodhisattvas surrounded by sentient beings. We're leading them in chanting and paying verbal, mental, physical homage. And so you do this whole huge, you know, visualization when you're doing the chanting, and it's, you know, your mind really goes somewhere else when you do that. Or like when we do posada and the incense offering, and we imagine we're inviting all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, you know, when they say when a sincere mind abounds, yeah, then all the assemblies, you know, the entire assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas comes. And so to really imagine that and, you know, bow to them, make offerings, you know, and to do that with an awareness of emptiness and dependent arising, and with a bodhicitta motivation, okay? Because the thing is, when we make offerings, when we bow, the offering and the bow, that's not the important part of what we're doing, okay? The important part is the motivation and the contemplation of emptiness and dependent arising. That's what's the important part that creates the merit, okay? You know, giving 10 million apples or 10 million diamonds, you know, that's nice, but the physical gift itself isn't what creates the huge amount of merit. It's what we're doing with our mind when we give it. Yeah, that's quite important to remember.
Sure changes the way you see those apples.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now we're going to move into another section where he's going to talk about the entities or the nature of the 2 collections. So he's going to talk about those and also discuss the 3 poisons and how they are discordant factors that interfere with our creating the two collections. So 228, recognizing that they are flawed, abandon attachment, anger, and confusion. Realizing that they are good qualities, devote yourself respectfully to non-attachment, non-anger, and non-confusion. Okay, so this is advice to abandon what's discordant with merit and how to create merit. Okay, so, attachment, anger, confusion. Sometimes we translate confusion as ignorance. Here the word is timug, okay, which is synonymous with merigpa, which is usually translated as ignorance. There's different kinds of ignorance, okay, or different kinds of confusion. So the ignorance that is the root of samsara, the one that is the first of the 12 links, that is the ignorance that grasps at true existence, okay? The confusion that's being spoken of here is confusion about cause and effect, okay? So the other ignorance was confusion about the ultimate nature. This is confusion about the conventional nature, especially karma and its effects. Okay, so they're called the roots of non-virtue. Okay, so confusion is that mind that, we get very confused over what to practice and what to abandon, don't we? What is virtue and what is non-virtue? And even when we study it, sometimes it's still not clear in our mind. And when we try to apply it to our own life, we get really confused. Yeah? So just being able to have some clarity about what's virtuous, what's non-virtuous, so so we can make good decisions in our life. That's something that's really important. Okay, then attachment is the mind that is based on exaggeration of someone or something's good qualities, and so not wanting to be separated from it. So, because it's based on exaggeration, the object is, we're totally hallucinating what the object is. Yeah. And then anger is based on exaggerating the bad qualities of someone or something, or projecting bad qualities that aren't there, not being able to endure it, and so wanting to fight or flight. Yeah. So we can see if we look in our life, those three are operating, a good portion of the day, aren't they? Yeah, because every time there's a pleasant feeling, then attachment arises. I don't want it to end and I want more. When there's an unpleasant feeling, even small unpleasant things, immediately, I don't like this, get this away. Yeah. So the mind's always going back, and we're very reactive to feelings. The feeling aggregate, of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral feelings, it controls us so much. We're so reactive to that. So it's very important to really watch our own mind and how we respond to even small pleasant feelings, small unpleasant feelings. Yeah, and how it runs our life.
Well, you mentioned maybe a month or so ago that it's been a while since the Abbey has done anything on the foreclosed placements and lifelines.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have something specific in mind about bringing that in?
About bringing in the foreclosed placements.
Thinking about feeling.
Yeah. Well, I'm mentioning it now. I wasn't going to go off into a tangent here.
Right. But I wondered, when you mentioned that, it looked like you had something in mind, and I was
Yeah.
hoping you did.
Well, what I have in mind is just this awareness of how reactive we are to the feeling aggregate, you know, completely. I mean, much of our karma ripens in the feeling, the pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and then how we, you know, we're so reactive to those feelings. Yeah? So the more we're able to be aware of those feelings and train ourselves to create some gap between experiencing the feeling and reacting, then that gives us a lot more freedom, you know, where you can feel something pleasant and say, that's nice, and that's it. That's nice and that's it, and leave it, you know. And where you can have an unpleasant feeling and just say, that's nice and that's it, you know. Ooh,
It's not nice.
well, no, it's nice. It's happening.
The unpleasant feeling?
Yeah, it's nice in this. I'm using the nice there, meaning it's happening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like, yeah, it's happening. It's there. It's nice. And it's going. Yeah. Instead of, you know, oh, some small, tiny pain in my body, and you know, or, you know, somebody said something that hurt my feelings. Oh, you know, I'm bent out of shape and upset for days, and wheezing, it sounds like. So I can hear myself, but I'm not sick. Anyway, yeah, come, go. That's nice. Yeah, okay, you wheeze. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so just creating some space there gives us a lot of freedom. And when they, you know, when they talk about the 12 links, you know, where they can be broken, one is, you know, between ignorance and, you know, karma, stopping the ignorance so you don't have the karma. And the other one is between the 7th link of feeling and the 8th link of craving. So you have the feeling, but you don't react by creating more karma. Okay? So both of those are situations where you cut it between the affliction and the karma. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but I'd also like to make a request that there can be some teachings on this or retreat, or
Yeah.
I haven't had that kind of experience.
We should refer her to the fact that you taught this
Yeah, there's,
extensively. We have the videos of the Venerable taught tremendously.
yeah, it was quite a long teaching. Yeah, but I think people like that practice. Yeah, everybody found it very, very helpful to do, so.
Tough and helpful.
Tough, helpful?
And helpful.
Yeah.
Just looking at you know, what we're attached to and how it just causes sense harm. I mean, it was
It
really
was
right
so
there.
good.
Yeah,
And doing retreat on it was fantastic.
yeah, so maybe next year we can do that again. Yeah, yeah, very helpful, I think. Especially before you do a lot of Tantra, because with Tantra, Tantra is another kind of, you know, 4 establishments of mindfulness, but to do it first on the 4 establishments of what is right here, right now, before you start to transform it, then it makes the transformation more starker. Yeah. Okay. Then the 3 that he's saying are the 3 words of virtue: non-attachment, non-anger, and non-ignorance. Do you hear that? Yeah.
It's being amplified too, because
Yeah. So I'm not sure where that's coming from because I don't have a cold or anything. Huh?
A lot of incense last night.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway.
they're being reactive.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, so non-attachment, non-anger, non-confusion, they're not just, the non doesn't mean just the absence of that. So it doesn't, non-attachment isn't, you're sound asleep, so you have the virtue of non-attachment in your mind. No, okay? Non-attachment means the opposite of attachment, yeah? And non-anger means the opposite of anger. Non-confusion means the opposite of confusion. So non-attachment is a balanced mind that isn't drawn into craving and clinging. Yeah, it's not the attached mind that's sticking. It's a mind that is resistant to attachment because it's balanced. Okay, and then non-anger isn't just, you're not angry. It's love, yeah, having love. So the direct opposite emotion. And then non-confusion is having some wisdom about what to practice, what to abandon. Okay, so remember when we studied low rig? Yeah, the non-attachment, non-anger, non-confusion came in the 11 virtuous mental factors, and the confusion, anger, and attachment came in the 6 root afflictions. Okay, so that's a lifetime practice right there. So doing 3, cultivating 3. Yeah, and especially, with the good ones, really thinking, that they're not just the absence, they're the actual opposite way of relating to the object. Okay, then, so that was 228, then 229. Through attachment, you go to the realm of hungry ghosts. Due to anger, you are pitched into hell. Out of confusion, you are reborn as an animal. Through their opposites, you become a human or celestial being. Okay, so now, as we so often find in the teachings, we get the disadvantages of one thing and the advantages of the other, because when we understand these, then it helps us make wise decisions, or an informed decision. Okay, so the confusion, anger, and attachment, it damages not only us, but also others, or I should say sometimes not only others, but also ourselves. Because sometimes, I think in our culture, as children, we're often taught not to do certain actions because it hurts other people's feelings, which is a good reason not to do those actions. But we're not taught about karma and how harming somebody else creates the negative karma and we experience pain due to our own actions. I'm wondering, in ancient times, because people believed in karma so much, or even in Asian societies now, if the children are brought up like, don't do that action because it creates negative karma, which will bring you suffering, and then later maybe they're taught, because it hurts others' feelings. Because I was thinking sometimes we, in the West, have a hard time believing in karma, but when we think of restraining from doing negative actions, we think about the effect on other people. But we also have to think about how those actions not only create the seeds for our own lower rebirths, but also how they obscure our mind so that when we sit down to meditate, we can't understand what we're meditating on, and so we can't gain realizations. So I think you need both perspectives, how it harms you, how it harms somebody else. Yeah. When you were little, how did your parents teach you to?
You're taught, like, no, you don't want this to happen to you.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
You sort of restrain yourself from not doing that thing with the idea that
It could happen to you. Yeah, okay, so different ways that we're taught as children. to avoid different, to avoid actions. And we need to learn to avoid actions for both reasons. Okay, but here, just realizing that when we act out of ignorance, anger, and attachment, how we're creating the cause for our own lower rebirth. And if we're born in lower realms, we're not going to be able to help anybody else because we won't even be able to help ourselves. Yeah. So we definitely want to abandon those. So when they talk about the results of the different afflictions or the different karma, there's different ways to do it. So one way here was from the perspective of the motivation. If you have a motivation of strong anger, you get born in the hell realm, which makes sense, doesn't it? Because what's hell all about? It's about fear and anger gone crazy. Yeah. If we have a lot of attachment and craving and actions motivated by that, it brings rebirth in the hungry ghost realm, which also makes sense because that realm is really characterized by attachment and craving and frustration at not getting what you want. And then again, through this perspective of your motivation, then ignorance brings rebirth as an animal, because ignorance, you're clouded, and one of the chief characteristics of animals is, their inability to, they don't have language, they can't think, they can't verbalize, they're under the control of others, all due to very strong ignorance. Okay? Now, from another way of presenting the results of karma, then we say, if you create very heavy karma, you get reborn in the hells. If you create medium, it's rebirth in the hungry ghosts. If you create light, then it's rebirth as animals. Except we talked about that before, how the Sutra of the 10 Grounds reverses animals and hungry ghosts. Okay, so don't get confused when you find these things put forth in different ways. It's just different perspectives. Yeah. Okay, but it is interesting to think about how confusion, attachment, and anger correspond with the three lower realms. They really correspond quite well. Yeah, and then through doing the opposite, of having a balanced mind that doesn't succumb to a lot of attachment and grasping, having love, having wisdom, then through that, creating the cause for rebirth as a human or as a deva, as a celestial being. Okay? And then 230, eliminating faults and acquiring good qualities is the dharma for one seeking higher rebirth. The elimination of all grasping by means of wisdom is the dharma for one seeking the highest good. Okay, so it's talking about, the previous verse, we were talking about, creating the cause for a higher rebirth by abandoning the three poisons, creating their opposite. Okay, and so that's the motivation for doing that. But when we are seeking the highest good of either liberation or awakening, then we want to eliminate all grasping whatsoever by means of the wisdom realizing emptiness. Okay, so eliminating faults in the first verse refers to the three poisons, and acquiring good qualities means practicing those three virtuous mental factors. Okay, but if we are still practicing abandoning, one set of three and practicing the other, but we have a bodhicitta motivation for doing that, then it becomes a cause for the highest good. So the point here is that the same action can be done with different motivations, and depending on what the motivation is, that will really govern what the result of the action will be. Okay? So if we're, let's say we're annoyed and we just abandon our annoyance, it's a form of anger, by thinking it'll, if I don't, it creates cause for a lower rebirth, then that helps us, not create that cause and instead to create a cause for good rebirth. But if we abandon, our annoyance by thinking of bodhicitta, that this is nothing compared to other sentient beings, and I don't want to be annoyed because I want to be able to create a lot of virtue, and annoyance interrupts my creation, my collection of merit, which I'm doing for the purpose of becoming a Buddha for benefit of sentient beings. Or if you do that abandoning, but with the wisdom, realizing emptiness, saying, that what I'm seeing as annoying me, that's just through my own judgmental mind. It's something's not inherently good or, inherently bad like that, so I don't need to be so reactive to things. So, then that creates the cause for the highest good. Again, it's, at our level, indirect causes, but eventually it becomes direct causes when we can actually feel those things. Okay, so it's really emphasizing here the importance of our motivation. And, it's so easy, especially in an environment like this where we're doing Dharma all day, that, or activities that look like Dharma all day, I should say that, that it's really a challenge to make sure that they actually do become Dharma, because it's easy to forget about our motivation. It's easy to forget about emptiness, okay, and just take things kind of for granted. What was that? Was that one whole chapter? No. Oh, I see what happened. I was goofed up about the outlines. Okay, so any questions so far before we continue? Or comments or anything? Mm-hmm.
I had one. When you were talking about the two different ways to break the 12 links,
Mm-hmm.
one at ignorance and one between feeling and craving,
Mm-hmm.
I can't understand how you can break it at feeling without having realized emptiness.
Well, one way is just what I was talking about. If you have very good introspective awareness that can notice what the feeling is, and you've also done a lot of meditation on this previous verse, so you're well acquainted with the disadvantages of giving into craving, then you can pause your mind there, and the feeling comes, but I don't need to react by craving to have more of it or craving to be free of it or anything like that.
But that doesn't break the 12 links.
Well, you may be, we're creating sets of 12 links all day long.
Oh.
It's not just one set of 12 links.
Okay.
We're creating many sets of 12 links. So that set that is, maybe part in motion gets cut at that point.
Right. I was equating breaking 12 links to liberation.
No.
or no rebirth in some
In samsara, no, it doesn't do that. I was just talking about one
set.
set of 12 links, yeah. Mm-hmm. Although, excuse me, if you've realized emptiness, then if craving starts to arise when you're dying, and you, instead of going from feeling to craving when you're dying, you can also cut it there. And then that would bring you into liberation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You were talking, I think on verse 226, about the Arya Bodhisattvas not taking rebirth under the influence of the 12 blames. So it's not technically a samsaric rebirth. But then at one point you said something that I kind of got lost with. I want to make sure that I understand, they always would remove all of any and all of their afflictions. They wouldn't delay in removing any of them.
No. Some people have the misunderstanding that bodhisattvas stay in samsara and give up their own enlightenment for the benefit of sentient beings. That's going under this thing of non-abiding nirvana, that when you become a Buddha, your consciousness is going to end, you see? And so thinking, oh, well, if you really want to help sentient beings, you have to do it as a bodhisattva. You can't do it as a Buddha because, when your afflictions are over, then the continuity of consciousness is ending. And so some people think it's like that, yeah? And they deliberately give up their liberation. It's not. It's the bodhisattvas, the thing is their compassion is so strong that if it were more beneficial for sentient beings, for them to give up their own, not to attain realizations, then they would, and stay in the misery of samsara, they would do that. But clearly they know that it's more beneficial for sentient beings if they do free themselves from their afflictions. Okay? Sometimes we talk about 3 kinds of bodhisattvas, the shepherd-like bodhisattva, the oars person bodhisattva, and the monarch bodhisattva. Yeah? So, the shepherd that's the idea of, well, you become enlightened and I'll come along later, And the oarsman will do it at the same time, and the monarch is, I'm leading the way. And so most bodhisattvas want to be the monarch, to lead the way.
And then the other question I have about that is, I guess I didn't know until recently that, so an Arya Bodhisattva is a person who's realized emptiness. They at all those different levels from there on up in the stages of the movies, they can control the rebirth, but it changes how they can control it.
Yeah, they can control their rebirth. The first bhumi starts with path of seeing, then all the way through path of meditation. So they can control their rebirth. But if you remember when we studied Salam, then, each one you can be reborn as, a Chakravartin, king of one world, and a Chakravartin, all these kinds of things. My guess is that actually bodhisattvas can be reborn. They can make many manifestations. I don't think they're really limited to those things that are said there. But those things, the different kind of samsaric rebirths that are more powerful, I think those are said as examples to encourage people, to practice.
And then is there some kind of dramatic change that happens in that aspect when they hit the 8th bhumi?
Well, yeah, because with...
Just for them, for their benefit, but for what they're able to do, the benefit of others.
Yeah, for sure, because with the 8th bhumi, all their afflictive obscurations are gone. So they have much greater ability to be of benefit to sentient beings, much greater.
And all those are called mental bodies all the way through?
Yeah, the thing is that sharp faculty bodhisattvas can have mental bodies at the path of seeing. It seems like maybe not all bodhisattvas can. I'm not sure. I've gotten different answers on this. But definitely by the 8th ground, then they all have a mental body.
The
Yeah. Yeah, can make many emanations, and then the emanations dissolve, and then, yeah. Uh-huh.
Question online.
Uh-huh.
Can an Arya Bodhisattva who takes a rebirth among sentient beings, independent of the 12 links, can they regress and fall back into the bondage of samsara?
No. No. I mean, once you've realized emptiness, you don't lose that realization. When you have a direct perception of emptiness, you never lose that. Yeah.
Just a comment, Vimala, I was just thinking about earlier when you were talking about the pain that us ordinary beings feel when we see people suffer.
Mhm.
Yes, for sure, there's personal distress, but the other thing is this recognition of our helplessness in the situation.
Yeah.
It's profoundly painful.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're saying that part of our feeling of despondency when we see other people suffering is recognizing our own helplessness, and that we can't do anything. And I think this is where bodhisattvas don't feel helpless.
Right.
They know that they can't crawl inside. See, one of the reasons we feel helpless is we want to solve the person's problem like that. And of course we can't, you know. Bodhisattvas don't even think about, you know, I'm going to solve it like that and make it all good and, you know, sprinkle the fairy dust on it. You know, they know it's going to take a long time, but they know they can do something about it. And they know that what they're able to do about it is also influenced by the other person's receptivity, which they cannot control. You know, with us, we may say, okay, it may take some time, but, you know, let's get going, come on. And we are very impatient with other people's lack of receptivity. And sometimes not even impatient, we're downright critical and blame people, yeah, for not being receptive to our help. Yeah, so, you know, a lot of times our own attitudes become obstacles, you know. So, you know, I mean, bodhisattvas aren't as helpless as we are in the sense that they have more tools and more ability to guide, but they are as helpless as we are in the sense that they can't snap their fingers and make it all better. And even Buddha can't do that. But they don't get depressed about that. Whereas we still have this fantasy idea that if I hurt so much seeing you suffer, I should be able to change all the circumstances so that you don't suffer. You know, we have that idea somewhere in our mind that I should be able to control this because it hurts me so much to watch it. And bodhisattvas don't have that idea. You know, because they understand dependent arising much better. They understand what's possible and what's not possible to happen with a snap of fingers. You know, and we're living in fairyland somewhere. Don't you think? You know?
Well, this is ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to be able, you know, and sometimes, you know, the way we're brought up, you know, like when you fall down and you're a little kid and mom's going to, or dad's going to kiss it and make the pain go away. Yeah? It's like, oh, now all the pain's gone. Yeah, and so as a little kid, you kind of like, well, yeah, you know, mom, dad kissed it. Yeah, it doesn't hurt as much. That's good. I feel loved. But so then we get the idea, oh, well, I should be able to, you know, do something very quick and make it all go away. No.
It seems too that if you have the view and you're operating just with one life,
Yeah.
you know, bodhisattvas, I would imagine, know what they can do now that's going to set up something for the next life.
Right.
They can set up something for the, so it's a whole different frame of
Yeah.
reference.
Yeah, yeah, their notion of time is very different. So, you know, for them, okay, this person I can help this way, you know, and then next life they'll be more receptive. And that's the, you know, you got to do it step by step like that. So they're happy and satisfied with that. Yeah.
Isn't it too, I mean, since your bodhicitta is completely based on renunciation, and in your renunciation you get that everything is in the nature of suffering right there. I mean, there's some level of acceptance, I would think, that our understanding penetrates so that we can deal with it.
Yeah.
We don't have the thought, this shouldn't be this way. We come at it with, this is how it is.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that we often come at things. It shouldn't be this way, you know. And that's kind of what scares me about all the presidential campaigning, is it's all done on the basis of, I am the one person who will be able to control this with your help, and together we will immediately be able to solve all these problems, you know. And then, of course, 2 years later at midterm, the problems haven't been solved, and then everything shifts, yeah. But yeah, we're quite unrealistic. Mm-hmm. And things take time, and, you know, you have to do what somebody's capable of doing at that moment, and you can't do more than that.
You know, when I was at the second monastery, I've heard Asher say this many times, and he was so calm about this in a way. It was really a lesson for me. He'd always say, there's nothing to be done. And he wasn't jazzed up, he wasn't depressed, he was just like ordinary.
Yeah.
Just a recognition there's nothing to be, about a situation where I would be like, you know, he just would say there's nothing to be done.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do right now.
Just wait until things
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Whereas we equate compassion with this frenzy. You know, if we're compassionate, we're full of frenzy, we're gonna, you know. Yeah.
The flame is going to go out instead of a long
Yeah.
wisdom.
I remember one time when I lived in Dharamsala, and one of the geshis below Tushita had fallen, and he was hemorrhaging inside, and he was dying, and the Westerners, you know, charged down the hill in the Jeep to, you know, to go to the hospital, and the doctor's got to come, and the doctor's got to come. And meanwhile, his friends, his other monk friends, came back. They had been out. They saw the situation. They set up the altar. They sat down and did puja. Calm, concentrated, focused on puja. The Westerners driving down the hill, got the doctor, brought the doctor up. Doctor, doctor, save him, what's going to happen? And the doctor said, he's dying. You know, and the Westerners said, no, he can't die. We've got to save him somehow, you know. And he said, no, if you take him down to the hospital, he'll probably die en route because he's hemorrhaging. It'll cause him extra pain. Yeah, but the inability to, you know, how difficult it was to just accept the situation as it was. Mm. Okay, so we'll stop here, and then, yeah, we're at the beginning of another section for next week. Next, what we just did is we covered in very general about the entities. It said method and wisdom, but we all basically, the entities of the two collections. Okay. But the first verse was more about merit. Second verse, verse 229, hey. Yeah, maybe 229 is more about cultivating wisdom. 230 is more about merit again.
Except the elimination of all grasping by means of wisdom from the highest good.
Which verse is that in?
30, the second part of that, the first one seems like.
Oh,
the second
right,
one seems
yes.
like wisdom.
Yes, 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 okay. Oh, that's right. Okay, so the first part of 230 is about the collection of merit. Second part is the collection of wisdom. Yeah. Oh, maybe I should talk about that a little bit more. Yeah. Well, I did. I talked about ceasing grasping. Okay. Okay, so we're good. So that was just the entities in general and their discordant factors. And then the next session we're going to go into is the branches of the collection of merit and the branches of the collection of wisdom. And here he's going to go into detail about lots of different actions that we can do to create the two collections. So what we just did tonight was how to remove the obstacles, yeah, which are the three poisons, and the general entities of the two collections, and then we'll go into the specifics. Okay, so we'll start that next week. We'll be at 2:31.